This place is an oasis for the traveler, for the weary to come, to be welcomed, but most of all, to be listened to.
Thank y'all for joining the Twincast. It's the podcast where business and faith are our foundation and a good laugh is always on the house. We're identical twin sisters navigating the real estate world one deal at a time. The Twincast starts now. Today on the Twincast, we have Kirk McCarley, and he is all the things, an author, a career and life coach. He works at ESPN. So we are excited to have him on our show today. Kirk, thanks for joining us.
Ladies, thanks for having me. And after that pitch, I just want to listen to you guys.
No, the show is for you. So we're
Okay.
excited to have you because when we read a little bit about you, we found out all the things that were important to us. Coaching. We believe in coaches in all aspects of your life. So tell us a little bit about your coaching and what that entails. What do you do?
I listen to people a lot. Coaching is part of the profession that would include therapists, psychologists, counselors, which at rough points in my life I've taken advantage of, and those people do a marvelous job. How I got into coaching was after I reached kind of the tail end of my human resources career, I hired a coach myself and was contemplating several different things to go into. Retirement is not a word in my vocabulary. I call it refirement. And so, what do I want to do next? I contemplated several different things: faith-based ministry, teaching, therapy. But about the third meeting, I said, I want to do what you do. So I entered into coaching. It was a next step out of human resources in a lot of ways because a heavy involvement with people, certainly. But as I soon found out, I alluded to listening later on. Coaches listen a lot. We have a curious mindset. We operate from the perspective that the client already has the answer to what it is they're seeking, their challenge, their obstacle, their problem. But maybe they haven't had somebody who's objective, who can present questions or challenges in such a way that it's going to provoke the answer to whatever it is they're seeking. So that's what coaching looks like for me. I'm so blessed to engage with so many interesting people, not only from a personal and life standpoint, but professionally, career wise, dealing with family situations, whatever the case may be, and have a good success rate, I think, with satisfaction with clients of bringing about those aha moments, those breakthroughs
Mhm.
of you've helped me with this. I know what to do now. And then I become an accountability partner. When are you going to do this by? What do you need to do? And that's in a nutshell what coaching looks like.
Well, I think all of us could use a coach at some point in our life. Do you do this virtually for your clients? Do you have a lot of those, or how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah. I'm in Northwest Florida. I've got a few clients scattered here and there, but for the most part, my clients are virtual. I would say 90 to 95% of them, mostly here in the United States, but I do go into Canada. I even have some overseas. I coached a couple of years ago a guy on the streets of Riyadh in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So that's always interesting to travel vicariously
Mm.
to where people are and taste their surroundings, look and see what they're dealing with. So it was fun to, as he met with me and I saw all the language behind him was in Arabic.
Mm. Well, it sounds like you're sometimes coaches directly deal with, just a certain age group or a certain walk of life, but it sounds like you don't limit yourself. You kind of, is there a particular client avatar that you're looking for, or?
There are two I'm always real intrigued with.
uh,
One is the young individual, Z or millennial,
mhm.
who has maybe gotten their education, they've gotten their feet wet with career, but maybe it's not exactly what they're looking for at that particular point in time. And I have an affinity towards those folks because I was there myself at one point in time. And it hadn't changed except for technology is much more prevalent than it was many, many years ago. But to help that person navigate where they want to go to next. And in so many instances, I hear I want to have an impact not only in my fraternity or sorority, but throughout the world, if that would be possible. The second group are people that are a little bit like myself. They have come to the latter portion of a career, and maybe they've got one more career move that's left. Perhaps they're ready to retire or move on to what's next, is to help them develop their plan for how they're going to have impact later in life. So those would be the two clients I focus on. What do I get? Those and everything else that's in between.
Well, I'm glad you don't limit yourself there because I think that your expertise is needed. I mean, just abundantly throughout. Our we're 42, right? And so definitely you can teach us a few things, and then we can teach. The other generations and generations before us. But if we don't have teachers, we don't have coaches telling us this is how you should do it, or this is how it worked for me. I feel like I mean, it just stops us. We need you. We need everybody to kind of have that mindset of let me help the person behind me. So I'm glad that you're doing that. I'm glad that you're doing that.
It takes a village not only to raise a child,
Yeah.
but to support us as adults. And I also teach group exercise classes. I'm a spinning instructor. I've got one of my regular participants who is in real estate. She has a coach herself who specializes in the real estate field. But what distinguishes her, in my mind, as a realtor, regardless of what the market is doing, she is always positive and optimistic. And I consider that. And if I were in the market for a house, I would like her to work with me because of the attitude that she brings into that endeavor.
Yeah, attitude is important. We tell that to I mean, anytime we are in a group setting, I mean, it's important to have the right attitude, and we like to share that with people because it's in this world, it's really easy to get drugged down with the negativity, and it's hard, and I don't know what to do, and you can get overwhelmed with that. But the attitude, and I believe you have mentioned that there's faith is important to you, and so tell us a little bit about faith because I think that helps with attitude. That is probably essential, and yeah.
I was talking to a person yesterday, and the topic of our conversation was those that are not in charge, but maybe second in command, support positions, assistants, chief financial officers to a chief executive officer, maybe a backup quarterback to use a sports metaphor. But when he asked me that question about what does the second in charge need to most focus on, my response to him is we are all second in charge depending on what our faith-based environment is. And that is for me, God and Jesus Christ are my leaders. I look to them for direction. When I have encounters with clients, it's often let me share the gospel and, if necessary, use words. So for me, that sharing the gospel is that oasis that translates into listening. This person needs to be heard, they need to be understood. I need to be God's hands and feet on this earth at this point in time to show what a person of faith is, to to help them with some of the burden that they're struggling with. So, to encapsulate the connection between faith and what I do, I would say that's it. God is my Savior and who I put my burdens on to direct me in every aspect of my life.
Yeah, I think that sums it up to love God and love people. And that's super important to us. We have a servant's heart. It sounds like that's what you do too. You have a servant's heart in every aspect. So anything that you're doing, that's what you're thinking of is serving someone else. And I think being successful, that's the biggest element to have is learning and knowing that you're serving someone else and not to put your needs in front of somebody else's, that you're serving other people. And that's how we become successful, is just learning to serve other people through our ministry.
On Sunday, I was installing something at the house. So I need to run to the hardware store and pick up a few things. There was a young lady outside who was trying to affix her license plate on the back of her car. First of all, I was curious as to why somebody would install their license plate in the parking lot of an Ace hardware store. But aside from that, I could tell that she was struggling with that. So the thought was, do you need help? And the response, no, I could tell she wasn't okay. So I stopped, helped her, and with the help of your friendly Ace hardware guy, we actually got that license plate installed. The thought came to mind, this is an opportunity to promote my business, which every encounter provides that. But God seemed to say to me, son, I know what you're doing. I see you. What can be more important than that? So she was very grateful, said thank you. And at that point in time, I guess I was somewhat of an angel sent to assist her. And maybe our paths will cross again, maybe not. But the important thing was there was that servant opportunity to take advantage of for me and the Ace Hardware guy.
For sure. I think seeing God in you probably too. People, I feel like people are nice, or people are always, if we're Christ followers, right? We should be a living example of doing nice things for people and helping them out and being the good Samaritan and stopping in our busy lives and doing things like that, right? Which you did, and sometimes like you said, you wanted to hand a business card or you wanted to say something, but sometimes, you just hear God say, hey, it's not about you right now. It's just about helping. And God will is probably already began working on something behind the scenes, and he'll bless you for that, for just, doing his work and being a servant at that time. So I've seen that countless times in my life, Nicole, in our life, right? And I'm sure you can give hundreds of examples of, you putting God first and seeking him, and everything else just kind of follow, he gives you the desires of your heart, and everything else just kind of falls into place, right?
Absolutely right. So that was an opportunity and a forum that you've given me not to share about what I have done, but what God did through me in that particular instance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have another question about your ESPN time, because I read a little bit about that, and my daughter plays a softball, and for our, I mean, she's 20 now, but while she was living in the house, there was always some type of ESPN going on in the background. So tell me what you do at ESPN, because she will be listening to this podcast, and we want to know.
Well, daughter, what I want to say to you, first of all, I cover football, college and NFL, basketball, men and women's, baseball, and softball. Out of all those sports, softball is my favorite. Why is that? Because the batter has to hit a pitch thrown at 68 miles an hour from the circle, and that's just 44 feet away as opposed to 60 feet 6 inches in baseball. But softball is just now developing a professional league. So, such as your daughter, people that play collegiately, they've got to go get real jobs like we all have after it's over with. There's probably not going to be a whole lot of name, image, likeness or offers that are coming as an athlete. So I applaud the softball players of the world that are out there. And also, they have great choreographed cheers from the dugout. So that's a lot of fun to do those games.
Yes, sir.
But you asked me what I do specifically. I'm a talent statistician. I am positioned in the press box. And in football, that tends to be pretty big. Softball and baseball, much smaller. But my function is to enhance the broadcast that the person watches, listens to. And I do that by throwing in statistics at key points, listening very carefully to what the conversation is between the play-by-play announcer and the color analyst, and what can I add as a silent partner through sending them a text or sending them a card that talks about a particular statistics at this point, or maybe something that's happened historically that may enhance what that discussion is that's taking place right now. So I have an analytical mind, strong Enneagram 5, anybody that's familiar with that. But aside from that, coaching gives me that avenue to listen, which as I've done this more and more years, and I just completed my 37th year, 37th season this past year, I appreciate the ability to listen and to enhance that broadcast as opposed to just throwing numbers out there.
I've often wondered, how does this guy know so much about everything? Where does he get his information from? And now I know the source. It's coming from you. I mean, I'm sure they have to, have the information, but but there's another source. There's somebody else. There's always somebody behind the scene. And so now I know that there is someone behind the scene giving the information. I like it. Okay.
Kirk is the man behind the curtain.
Yeah. The great and powerful.
That's right. I'm Oz. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
But I try not to be an imposter at the end.
Right. This is important. You know what? I just watched that Wizard of Oz movie, and well, have you watched the most recent one? The I don't know what it's called. I think it's, you know which one I'm talking about?
Is it Wicked?
Wicked. Yes. Have you seen the movie Wicked?
My wife and daughter have,
Uh-huh.
but the most advanced I am is 1939, the original movie that didn't get Best Picture of the Year that year. So that's the trivia question for you and your guest. We'll come back to that at the end. But that's what I'm stuck on is Judy Garland and Ray Bolger and all the other
Pick the right
cast of
version.
characters.
That's
Yeah,
the right
that's
version.
right.
I'm with you. I've seen both of them, and I still like. They took the innocence to me out of the Wizard of Oz, and I'm sticking with you on that one. So we'll say that.
Ariana Grande can't be Dorothy.
For sure.
She sure can't. She sure can't. Tell us, Nicole. You have another question there?
Well, I just noticed, I mean, hearing your conversation, Kirk, you're a listener. You've said that multiple times, and being successful, I believe in almost any industry, listening, just listening. If people would take the time to listen to what other people are saying, it is a huge advantage in my industry, real estate wise. We speak to a lot of clients, and you have to listen, and just taking the time to hear what they have to say and really putting it in. They may not even know exactly what they're looking for, but if you just listen, then you'll be able to put those pieces together. And it sounds like you got that down pat.
I'm working on it. We're all works in progress. But what really impressed me, this is 12, 13 years ago. I was in a men's group when we were still in St. Louis, and there were 8 people at the table. The group leader is actually down where I am now part time, and he is in the group that I'm in on Thursday mornings. But he was the facilitator. He did a good job of facilitating the 7 of us. There was one guy who probably contributed 50 to 60% of what was said. And so that had to be managed. 5 of us were probably about the other 48%. And then there was one guy who rarely said anything. But when he did speak, it was profound. And I picked up a lot from that of how humility, observing, and listening well can really build power in an individual. He learned how to do that. I later found out that, unbeknownst to me, he was the person who actually started the church years and years before that. So that was a lesson I picked up that really stuck with me that translates to the power of listening and having a humble heart and spirit.
Yeah, it's important because I mean we see this often in my dad's a pastor, so we've been in the ministry for a long time, and people just want to talk to they just want you to talk and listen to them as they're talking, and kind of like you said, coaching, guiding them, giving them some kind of sense of I'm not just going to be on my phone, I'm not going to be distracted by that, I'm going to intently listen to what you're saying and then provide information to them and help them and guide them and things like that. And as someone in the ministry, people are just desperate for that. They're just desperate for a friend. They're desperate for someone to mentor them. And sometimes they can't communicate that, but you just being there and guiding them and sometimes just verbalizing that and saying, hey, I'm here to listen. Whatever you want to talk about, whenever you want to talk about it, I'll do that for you. So trying to be a friend to people in our church and to our community is something that we try to do often. We try to find those people and mentor them, and whether it be a younger woman or I'm married, so trying to be someone to look up to, as a married individual, because that is hard right now. It's hard for people to stay married. You've been married for, what did you tell me? A long time, 50, almost 50.
46 years, and it's been really hard on my wife.
Good man. Right. So good answer. Good answer. I don't know what my husband would say, but we've been married a fraction of the time, 16 years. And so I have
It's been hard work too.
for him. He has to put up with me. So I give him a run for his money for sure. But staying, trying to help those younger married couples that have only been married for a few years, and just trying to pour into them and saying, hey, you can get through it, and this is what's worked for us. We don't have all the answers, but this is what's got us to 16.
And you do have one big answer, which is putting God in it. I think, and have seen most of the people that have been married, for this amount of time, the only way is with having God in the relationship. So
It's important.
I'll throw out a statistic. Of course, I would, but it pertains to marriage, and I heard it many years ago, but it's probably still got validity to it. Um, People who don't have a faith have the highest divorce rate statistically. Um, but a person who proclaims to be a Christian and a person who doesn't have faith, it's basically about the same amount. There's not a whole lot of differential. People that go to church together, it's about a 25% divorce rate, which is still high. But a couple who prays together every night or once a day at some point during the day is about a 1% divorce rate. And we try to do that every evening. Sometimes one of us falls asleep before the other, but our intentions are good, and we try to make a habit of doing that.
I love that. Prayer. We're reading a book in our women's ministry, and it's called Fervent Prayer by Priscilla Schreier. And it's important. Prayer is of utmost importance, I believe, aside from the relationship you have with Christ, right? But that would include prayer, I'm sure. So praying is important. So I'm glad to hear that you are praying in your marriage. And me and Jesse have to work on that, because we obviously we go to church all the time. We're always involved in ministry, and we're always, I feel, probably praying for each other, but intentionally making that, like you said, an everyday thing is something we need to definitely work on. So
implement.
yeah, we need to implement it. Yeah. So there you go, coaching us.
Life coach. There it is.
Well, Cherie, as your coach for today, for this period of time, I'm going to hold you accountable for that. So I'll follow up with you and see how you and Jesse are doing.
Okay, I appreciate that. There you go, folks.
You need an accountant.
Give Nicole some coaching now that you're here. Is there anything you'd like to coach Nicole on? Have you heard anything you'd like
You
to?
haven't heard much from me just yet.
Nicole is just a subject that I need a lot more consideration about. So we may have to have another session.
Well, based off what I've heard so far, Kirk, I do feel like I do want to look into it. I hear your voice. I feel the intent is there. I feel, yeah, I think it's a good thing. We'll have to get together after the show and talk about the setting up a session, because I feel like
I love that.
it's a
Thank
good
you.
thing. Yes, sir.
I want to ask you. I wanted to ask you about your book. You have a book out, and it has. Tell me the title. I know it has something to do with children, and that's what reminded me. So tell me about that.
Well, it's not a children's book, although I kind of have a childlike attitude at times. When I tell people how old I am, I'll preface that by saying, but I'm immature. but with a grin. But the book is thoughts for my kids and other people's kids.
Mhm.
And those are some words of wisdom, advice perhaps, that come from me to my kids, but we're all somebody's kids.
Mm.
So as I say in the forward, it's for kids between the ages of 4 and 84. So how this book came together is when I launched my coaching business 10 years ago. I had to set up a website. How am I going to market? How am I going to have an outreach to people? I started building blogs, posting those out there. I got a voice in our monthly tabloid that is in our area that all who visit the Emerald Coast between Destin and Panama City Beach are going to have access to, with blogs about leadership, communication, some sports thrown in, observations. But these started to accumulate, and I again got that in this newsletter. And after a while, the publisher told me, said, Kirk, you ought to write a book. And I'm like, okay. I investigated that and learned that there is a desire for, among about 80% of people, I want to write a book someday,
Mm.
but only 3% actually execute that. I've never been top 3% in anything. Here was my opportunity. Here was my chance. That motivated me. I identified a self-publishing firm that helped me with that. They were wonderful. And so that came out in October 2024. That's out on Amazon, and it's primarily geared to Z's and millennials. But I think there are things that are going to resonate with everyone there. Again, it's a compilation of my blogs, basically broken down into a variety of different subjects.
That's perfect. We'll have to check it out. I'm sure it's on audio as well, like through Amazon, you can do an audio version of it.
It's on Kindle,
Okay.
so you can get that. Audio, I have not invested in that thus far because audio is a little bit expensive for what I can afford right now. But my wife really wants me to do that. And so I tell her when you make enough money on your next project, you can pay for my audio
All
version.
right. Okay. Well,
You wrote the book and you'll let her do the other part. Okay.
okay, fair.
That's right.
It's
Okay.
teamwork.
Teamwork. There you go again. There it is. Okay. Well, I have one final question before we end our show here, and that is, if the walls could talk at your home, what would they say?
This place is an oasis for the traveler, for the weary to come, to be welcomed, to maybe partake in a meal, but most of all, to be listened to. And that's from both myself and my wife. We'll sometimes go on outings with people, and I'm sure you all have experienced this as well, where someone is talking about themselves and they're really not invested in you, or they don't seem to be. Those are the moments where we get the nudge from God that says, okay, your role is not to be heard tonight or during this encounter, it's to listen. So that's what the walls would contain, is the voices of the people that have been in our dwelling in the 8 years that we've lived here, that have been listened to. And we like to think that God is smiling upon that.
I love it.
Kirk, that was a great answer. And we love that you are listening to your people, listening to the community. And we thank you so much for being on our Twincast today.
It was my pleasure, ladies, and what a joy and a privilege for me to connect with the both of you.
Thank you so much. If you love today's episode, like, subscribe, or share.
And until next time, keep dreaming big, planning smart, and remember, with the right team, you hold the keys.